Southern Fried True Crime covers cases that are not suitable for young listeners, and there may also be some explicit language used. Listener discretion is advised. In Fort Campbell, which is located astride the Tennessee-Kentucky border, Friday, September 2nd, 2016, was a beautiful evening. Around 75 degrees, clear, cloudless skies. The wind, which was a bit nippy earlier in the day, died down. It would have been a great night for an outdoor party or bonfire, or to take a stroll where you can breathe in the crisp fall air. The possibilities were endless, especially for a young 20-something-year-old woman with her whole life ahead of her. So when 25-year-old PFC Shadow McClaine got into a car with her ex-husband Jamal, we're not sure what she was thinking. To say they had a complicated history would be putting it mildly. Would she willingly go with him? Shadow and Jamal's relationship had fallen apart in a really bad way. But no matter what Shadow's intentions were for that evening, her ex-husband's were not the same. Jamal thought Shadow was in his way, that she was the one obstacle blocking him from having a fulfilling career and a well-traveled life. And that night, he was going to do something about it. He had been planning it for months, and he was finally ready to execute his vision. Welcome to episode 207, The Murder of Shadow McClaine. Shadow Bernice Willis McClaine was born on January 2nd, 1991, to her mother, London Wegerson, and her father, Jesse Willis, in Roseville, California. Shadow had one sister who was 2 years older than her, and two brothers who were both about 16 years younger than her. Shadow evidently sometimes used the name Bernice Willis. I'm not sure exactly why, but I'll explain how we know that later. Shadow and her brothers were especially close. Those who knew her said she adored them. I have to wonder if she might have played an important role in raising her younger brothers, considering their 16-year age gap. Throughout her life, Shadow was a great big sister to her little brothers. She was patient, smart, and creative. Plus, she loved the outdoors. She loved spending the day hiking or fishing with her dad, and she also loved to read and was into rollerblading. Shadow grew up in Yuba City, California. Her parents were both from the area. Yuba City is a medium-sized city of approximately 70,000 people. It's about 40 miles north of Sacramento. And honestly, you might have heard about it before. During my research, I was shocked to see how much had happened there. I'll give you the highlight reel. In December of 1955, Yuba City experienced the worst flood to ever hit California. Over the course of 9 days, 20 inches of rain fell into Yuba City. For reference, 2 inches of rainfall can cause a flash flood. By the end of the downpour, 4,338 people were injured, 335 people were hospitalized, and 80 had died. Then in March of 1961, a plane crashed in Yuba City. It was a Boeing B-52 Stratofortress carrying 2 thermonuclear weapons. The bombs were destroyed on impact and luckily did not explode, so no radioactive material was released, thank God. After that, in May of 1976, a school bus carrying Yuba City High School's choir drove off the edge of an exit ramp. They fell 28 feet and crashed. 27 students and 1 adult died. More than 20 others were injured. Of course, this isn't a history lesson on Yuba City. I'll let you Google all the other crazy things that have happened there yourself. I just had to share some of the more infamous incidents with you. When researching Shadow's case, I was fascinated that her hometown was the site of so much disaster. Shadow herself was probably aware of these events in Yuba City. None of them happened in her lifetime, but she did go to Yuba City High School. The school held memorials for the crash victims for a long time. I found record of one remembrance ceremony event as late as 2016. Beyond Yuba City's penchant for bad luck, it's also known for being home to the Beale Air Force Base. maybe the military presence in Yuba City had a profound impact on Shadow, because after graduating from Yuba City High in 2009 and a brief stint at Yuba College studying art history, she joined the U.S. Army in September of 2011. Upon entering the Army, Shadow was trained as an air traffic controller. Throughout her career with the U.S. military, she was stationed in South Korea and deployed to Afghanistan. Afterward, she was stationed at Fort Campbell in the 101st Airborne Division. The Fort Campbell Army installation straddles the border between two states, Kentucky and Tennessee. Fort Campbell sits on over 100,000 acres, or 160 square miles, and is more than 7 times the size of Manhattan. Today, it is home to about 27,000 active duty soldiers and with about 50,000 of their family members. It has its own Starbucks, bowling alley, and fast food joints, and is pretty much a small city unto itself. The base is home to 3 major combat units: the 5th Special Forces Group, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and of course, the Screaming Eagles, the renowned 101st Airborne Division. As I said, the base sits on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, closest to Hopkinsville and Clarksville in terms of larger cities, but close enough in proximity to Nashville, where some of this story takes place. After 5 years of military service, 25-year-old Private First Class Shadow McClaine was ready for a new adventure. She was set to retire on October 11, 2016. She had shared with her family that she was excited for the change. She was going to return to Yuba City, enroll in college, and pursue a career in either photography or writing. According to her mother, Shadow had truly enjoyed her time in the Army at first, but her appreciation for the Army waned after certain people entered her life, according to her mother's court testimony. One of those certain people Shadow's mother was alluding to was likely her ex-husband, Jamal. Jamal Williams McCrae was born in 1992. He spent some of his childhood with his father, Kenneth, but at age 6, Jamal was sent to live with his mother in Florida. According to Kenneth's court testimony, Jamal's mother was abusive. She would harshly and unfairly discipline Jamal throughout his earliest years. Jamal's father believed that his mother inflicted this abuse in part due to his son's small stature. Kenneth attributed Jamal's slim frame to being born prematurely, and he claimed that Jamal was a quiet kid due to his skinny body and his mother's abuse. As he got older, Jamal aspired to be a pilot, but when that didn't work out, he turned to the U.S. Army. And that's how Jamal met Shadow in the early 2010s. They were in the 101st Airborne together at Fort Campbell. He was a sergeant, she was a private first class. By the end of September 2014, 22-year-old Jamal and 23-year-old Shadow were married, which was a big surprise to their families. For a while, Jamal's father didn't even know he was married, and Shadow's mother, London, had never even met Jamal. This was strange for London, since she and Shadow were incredibly close. Despite living several states apart, the mother and daughter communicated in some way every single day. To not meet your daughter's husband before they were married? I bet that was a shock. Now, if you're familiar with the military, you know marriages can happen fast. Between military spousal benefits and the possibility of deployment and the stress of literally putting your life on the line for your country, the culture of let's do it now versus later makes a lot of sense. And it works out for many people. But it did not work out for Shadow and Jamal. Shortly after their marriage began, they experienced major issues. Shadow's mother characterized the relationship as toxic, with vicious fighting that often turned physical. And 5 to 6 months later, in early 2015, they were divorced. According to Shadow's own posts on her social media accounts, Jamal had cheated on her multiple times. Shadow's mom, London, said her daughter would find condoms in his clothing, along with other signs of infidelity. Shadow alleged that Jamal had slept with a woman who waited tables at Hooters. That woman, named Tiffany, gave interviews to the media. She claimed that Shadow was stalking her and had allegedly sent harassing messages to her on social media. She also said that Shadow had the wrong Tiffany, claiming that there were like 8 Tiffany's working at Hooters at the time. She also said Shadow zeroed in on her after she found a receipt in Jamal's pocket from the restaurant with the server's name, Tiffany, printed on it. However, Shadow claimed that some or all of these harassing comments did not come from her. She believed that Jamal and others were making fake accounts in her name. That way, they could stage a stalking scenario. But one direct message apologizing to Tiffany for the comments did come from a Facebook page called Shadow McClaine Photography. By the end of it all, Shadow was arrested twice for stalking charges. Then later in 2015, Shadow alleged that Jamal had raped her. As a result, the military opened an investigation into Jamal. At one point, Shadow rescinded her allegation, but later, she said it was true. Jamal had raped her. And she told officers that Jamal had intimidated her into recanting the report of sexual assault. The military investigation for these rape allegations stopped Sergeant Jamal Williams McCrae from being transferred to South Korea, which was what he wanted. However, Shadow's family has frequently asserted on social media that the military did not do enough to investigate her claims. On an Instagram post from November 19, 2015, Shadow wrote, "After being forced into a divorce by my narcissistic ex-husband who got me arrested to get away with his infidelity with a Hooters girl and then with a cop out of Springfield he met on Match.com while he was fucking the Hooters girl for 2 months, and me at the same time, during the divorce process, I am focusing on getting myself back into shape now. Never trust a man who cheats, and karma will give him a swift kick in the ass soon when he loses his job and goes to prison." Her public Pinterest profile read, "Ex cheated on me with a cop and got away with many more crimes against me. His loss for losing my loyalty. Now he has Hooters bitches lying to police for him. They will end up going to jail soon, rest assured. I'm in a better place in my life now and found someone worth my time and love." In May 2016, Shadow had told the authorities that someone had cut her vehicle's brake lines. She suspected whoever did it was somehow connected to Jamal. In an interview with her friend, Tristan Harding, there was a photo of what appeared to be her brakes shown in the news clip. However, it appears there were questions about whether or not Shadow's brake lines had actually been cut. According to Shadow's mother, these doubts were cast in an effort to shove the incident under the rug by military and authorities. Her mother, London, recalled how tumultuous Shadow's relationship with Jamal was. She realized that her daughter had made some mistakes, though she did not elaborate on what she did. I suspect they were related to Shadow perhaps stalking Jamal's girlfriends. London told Dateline she's not totally innocent in all this, but it's not all her either, and she's been trying to clean herself from it. The people posting don't have all the facts and are trying to paint my daughter as a villain. Regardless, by September of 2016, it appeared that Shadow had moved on from Jamal. She was seeing someone new, just as her Pinterest profile alluded to and her mother confirmed. And she was about a month away from getting out of the military and returning home. A clean start was just on the horizon, but it would always stay out of reach. At 7:07 p.m. on Friday, September 2nd, 2016, Shadow texted her mother that she was driving. At this day and time, she was supposed to be dog-sitting at a friend's house, but no one ever saw her alive again. The next day, on Saturday, September 3rd, Shadow's mother, London, was worried. Shadow hadn't touched base the night before, and she hadn't texted or called on Saturday either. By the next day, London was scared and nervous. In interviews, she said she had hoped everything was fine, but she suspected something awful had happened. Monday, which was Labor Day, came and went without any word from Shadow. London told the Huffington Post, quote, "We are always in communication, so I knew something was terribly wrong. This just wasn't like her." Shadow was also supposed to be dog-sitting for her friend Tristan over Labor Day weekend, but never showed up. London contacted officials at Fort Campbell on Tuesday, September 6th. She let them know that she hadn't heard from Shadow. The officials verified that Shadow had not reported for active duty on that day. Also on that day, she was supposed to go to a court appearance related to her rape allegation, but she didn't show up. Right away, London believed something had happened to Shadow. Her daughter was missing, not just ignoring calls and texts. So London traveled from her home in North Carolina to Kentucky. She was there by September 8th. Shadow's father, who lived in California, also came. Now, family, friends, and law enforcement officers were searching for Shadow. Later, the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation joined forces for Shadow's case. And according to USA Today, these agencies worked closely with Shadow's family. Supporters had also started a GoFundMe to help with costs for Shadow's family. People donated more than $11,000. And the National Veterans Search and Recovery Program was also instrumental in providing resources to Shadow's family. On Monday, September 12th, volunteers and investigative officials looked for Shadow in the Dunbar Cave State Park. They didn't find her or any evidence. Around this same time, Shadow's other family members confirmed that Shadow hadn't reached out by text or calls, and her phone was either dead or turned off. Missing persons posters and flyers were distributed with Shadow's details, but also revealed she had also gone by Bernice Willis, her middle name and maiden name. Perhaps she was shedding memories of her married name, or even avoiding the notoriety of her legal name considering the legal trouble she had recently been in. On Tuesday, September 13th, more than a week after Shadow went missing, her car was found. She drove a silver two-door Hyundai Elantra with California tags, and it was recovered in a parking lot in Nashville, Tennessee. That's about an hour's drive away from Fort Campbell. According to London's interviews with True Crime Daily, Shadow's car was getting repeatedly ticketed. The authorities eventually put a boot on it, and that's why police ran the plate. London explained that she couldn't imagine why Shadow would have left her vehicle in the specific area of Nashville. There just wasn't anything nearby related to Shadow's daily life. London believed that her daughter's car was left there by someone else. Days after Shadow's car was discovered, a candlelight vigil was held in her honor. It was held in front of the Montgomery County Courthouse in Clarksville, Tennessee. Many of Shadow's friends, family, and supporters attended, including the mayor of Clarksville at the time, Kim McMillan. McMillan said the following about Shadow's mother: "It is something I believe that no parent should have to go through, and as mayor of this city, I wanted her to know that Clarksville stands behind her, feels with her, and wants her to know that we are there for her." On Thursday, October 6, 2016, 24-year-old Jamal Williams McCrae, Shadow's ex-husband, was held in the Montgomery County Jail in Clarksville on out-of-county warrants, reported the Leaf Chronicle. The warrants were officially unrelated to Shadow's case. But unofficially, many suspected Jamal's current charges were a placeholder, at least until more evidence about Shadow's case came to light. By Thursday, October 27, 2016, 7 weeks after Shadow vanished, authorities announced that 2 men were taken into custody in relation to Shadow's disappearance. These men were booked into the Montgomery County Jail. At the time of their booking, the U.S. Army would not release the men's names or charges. They only stated that the 2 soldiers are currently being held as persons of interest. However, Shadow's mother, London, unofficially confirmed that one of the men was Jamal. A month later, on Friday, November 25th, the government revealed more details. They explained that 2 soldiers with the 101st Airborne Division faced conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder charges related to the slaying of Private First Class Shadow McClaine. These charges came under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and these two previously unnamed men were Jamal Williams McCrae and a man named Charles Robinson. Charles Robinson III was born in Springfield, Illinois, but spent much of his childhood in Charlotte, North Carolina. According to Charles, he was raised in a rough environment. He claimed that his father was jailed for domestic violence, and that his father once stabbed a man 15 times with a screwdriver. He also claimed he was sexually assaulted by a family friend. By 2016, Charles was married and a father to a young son, and an Army specialist in the 101st Airborne Division with Jamal and Shadow. However, Charles had never met Shadow. He had only ever heard of her through her ex-husband Jamal. Charles would later admit he didn't even know Shadow's name. At the time of Jamal and Charles's arrests in late November, Shadow's mother asked the public to provide information pertaining to Shadow's whereabouts. She said, "We just need to find her. I'm missing her. I have so many questions. The waiting is the hardest part." The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation discovered 25-year-old Shadow McClaine's skeletal remains on Monday, January 23, 2017. They were located on I-24 off Exit 19 in Robertson County. Some news reports say a passerby found Shadow's body, but it's possible Charles or his wife, who becomes important later, told authorities where to find her. She was positively identified by dental records. After the investigators recovered Shadow's body, her father told reporters, quote, "I do know now where my daughter is at. I get to take her home." Shadow's remains were flown to California. As a soldier, her casket was shrouded in the American flag and the traditional formal military procession as they transported Shadow to the airport. A motorcycle group known to honor deceased soldiers and veterans, called the Patriot Guard Riders, also escorted Shadow to the plane. Major General Andrew P. Pappas, commanding general for the 101st Airborne Division, said, "All of us here at Fort Campbell are saddened by the news, and our thoughts and prayers are with the family at this time." Shadow's mother, London, told Fox 40 News that the U.S. Army hadn't respected Shadow since she had made the initial rape allegation against Jamal. Now London felt Shadow was getting the respect she deserved. At noon on February 11th, Shadow's memorial service was held at the Crossroads Community Church in Yuba City. In lieu of flowers, Shadow's family requested that mourners donate to the National Headquarters for Disabled American Veterans, and she was buried in the Yuba City Cemetery. At this time, Shadow's cause of death was still unknown. After finding her body, court proceedings came next, and Shadow's family was ready for a fight. According to the Leaf Chronicle, Shadow's father said, "We are going to make everyone who had anything to do with this pay for what happened to my daughter. We are coming for you. You will not get away with this." London told reporters, "I want justice. Eye for an eye, blood for blood." Shadow's family also proclaimed that they would have supporters at every single court date. Around this time in February of 2017, both Jamal and Charles were in pretrial confinement, awaiting their impending court-martial. A few months later, in April of 2017, the prosecutors had established a strong circumstantial case against Jamal and Charles. They believed that the two men killed Shadow to silence her rape allegations against Jamal. One prosecutor said in the preliminary hearing closing arguments, "We don't have an eyewitness. We don't have a manner of death yet. What we have is circumstantial evidence, and a lot of it." And this circumstantial evidence primarily came from Charles's wife, Jade Robinson. Jade told the authorities that she had overheard Charles and Jamal. They were whispering together on her and Charles's porch. She heard them discuss Exit 19 and getting rid of a car. Both details were directly related to Shadow's case. since her body was found at exit 19 and her car was abandoned in Nashville. According to Jade Robinson's interviews with the authorities, on the night Shadow vanished, Charles told his wife he was going to a rave. He wore dark clothing and a face mask. The next day, Jade watched Charles clean his truck bed with bleach and a mop. She also claimed that Charles said, "If you're asked, say I was home all night." She also said she heard him ask a neighbor to borrow a pressure washer. During preliminary hearings, it was revealed that Jamal had claimed that he was at home during the time and date of Shadow's murder. But this did not align with what Jamal's girlfriend told detectives. She said that Jamal told her he was in Nashville. When she asked, "Why are you in Nashville?" Jamal explained that he was looking for Shadow. She was missing. However, at the time that Jamal said this, it was still Labor Day weekend of 2016. Shadow had not been reported missing yet. But at the Nashville parking lot where Shadow's car was found, security camera footage showed a black male leaving Shadow's car, and a search of Jamal's car turned up a duffel bag with clothing that matched those worn on the man in the video. That's why he was in Nashville. At these preliminary hearings, Jamal and Charles's defense counsel asserted that the prosecution was relying on unreliable witnesses. They argued that these accusations were baseless, and they requested that the death penalty not be considered for Charles and Jamal's cases. Jamal's attorney said that the sexual assault allegation was the result of their acrimonious divorce. He also said that the couple engaged in a BDSM lifestyle, which explained the text messages found about physical acts that could be seen as abuse. According to military prosecutors, the sexual assault investigation remained open over the next several months before Shadow disappeared in September 2016. Prosecutors argued that Jamal wanted the military assignment in Korea but could not move on with his career because the sexual assault allegation remained unresolved, and also that he was angered by Shadow's continued presence in his life, as she had been accused of stalking one of his girlfriends. After these pretrial hearings, the commanding officer's report directed that the men be bound over for trial. On Friday, August 11, 2017, Charles Robinson III began his court-martial proceedings in Fort Campbell. At first, he didn't enter a plea, and he had his case heard by a U.S. Army judge rather than a jury. A little over a month later, on September 28, 2017, Charles suddenly accepted a plea deal and pled guilty to premeditated murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. And he agreed to provide honest testimony during Jamal's court proceedings in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Charles admitted to his role in killing Shadow McClaine, and he explained exactly what happened. According to his story, Jamal had approached him about killing Shadow beginning on June 1st of 2016, 4 months before she went missing. Apparently, Jamal had already made other attempts to kill Shadow on his own, but he had failed. The first time he tried to poison Shadow. Then he had attempted to strangle her. Now, the story of her cut brake lines doesn't seem so paranoid or unlikely. On August 15th of 2016, Jamal went to Charles's home in Fort Campbell. This is likely when Charles's wife Jade overheard the two men talking. Jamal and Charles hammered out the details of Shadow's murder, and Jamal agreed to pay $10,000 to Charles for him to do the actual crime. Later on, Charles said that he only ever received $200 of that payment. The two men decided that Shadow's murder had to happen before Labor Day. They knew that Shadow had a court hearing regarding her rape allegations against Jamal on Tuesday, September 6th. According to Charles, his wife, Jade Robinson, was involved in these discussions. She had not overheard anything, as she had claimed to the authorities. She was a participant, according to her husband. However, it's important to note that Jade has never been charged with anything related to Shadow's murder. As Charles, Jamal, and perhaps Jade continued to plot Shadow's murder, Charles proposed that they use Jamal's gun to kill her. However, Jade thought this was a bad idea. She suggested using a knife or a box cutter instead. Initially, the idea was to kill Shadow at exit 24 on I-24. But on the evening of Friday, September 2nd, there was a party happening at this location. Too many people were nearby, so they changed the murder site to exit 11. Then Jamal approached Shadow. He told her he had a scavenger hunt planned for her. They went to exit 11 together and began digging a hole in a field, presumably to find something related to the scavenger hunt. At this time, it was early in the morning on September 3rd. And as they were digging, Charles, whom Shadow had not met, approached them. He pretended to own the land where Jamal and Shadow were digging. He acted upset at their trespassing. Charles ordered Jamal and Shadow to their knees. He said he was going to search them and hold them until the police could arrive. Next, Charles searched Jamal. He found the box cutter that they had previously planted on him. Then Charles went to Shadow to search her. And instead, he killed her with the box cutter and a knife. He slashed her throat and stabbed her in the chest. Afterward, he broke her neck to ensure that she was dead. Then the two men put Shadow's body into Charles's pickup truck, and Jamal poured ammonia on her to hide the evidence. He also poured ammonia on the grassy area where she had been killed. Then they left Shadow's body in a field on exit 19 near Maxey Road. After that, Charles drove Jamal to Shadow's car, and Jamal disposed of the car in Nashville, where it was later found. Jamal was also in charge of getting rid of the bloody clothing and boots. Meanwhile, Charles got rid of the knife and the box cutter. He threw the murder weapons in the Cumberland River. They were later found by investigators. According to Charles, after killing Shadow, he then went home and told his wife what happened. He testified, "I informed my wife where we had placed the body and what had happened, and then we had sex." Shortly after, Charles washed his truck bed with acetone. His goal was to remove both Shadow's blood and the paint. Then he repainted his truck bed. During Charles's sentencing, he apologized to Shadow's family. He said, "I think about your daughter every day. If someone killed my son, I would be a broken man. I deserve to be punished. I want to set a better example for my son than my father was to me. Shadow didn't deserve to be hurt. Shadow never hurt me." His words were related to him requesting a more lenient sentence. And in the end, he got it. He was sentenced to 25 years in military prison. He was also credited with 558 days of time served, which was 200 more days than he had actually served. Apparently, the U.S. military had made some administrative errors in Charles's incarceration, and this was their gesture to make up for it. But one was that they would have a superior visit him once every 2 weeks, and they didn't. Charles was also demoted and dishonorably discharged. The prosecution wanted a harsher sentence. One lawyer said the following of Charles: "This is not a man who committed an act of passion. This is someone who said, 'I'll kill her for $10,000. He didn't even know her name." The information that Charles provided was huge for the case. It was the catalyst that caused more charges to be brought against Jamal. In March of 2018, Jamal was charged with multiple conspiracy offenses, obstruction of justice, sexual assault, attempted murder, solicitation for murder, and premeditated murder. At this point, newspapers reported that 2 women were suspected to be involved in Shadow's death. It's safe to assume one of those women was Charles's wife Jade, whom we have discussed, and the other was likely Jamal's girlfriend, though that is unconfirmed. Jamal claimed the second woman knew of the crime, gave him advice on it, and helped him clean Shadow's items out of his apartment. But both women denied any involvement and were not charged. As prosecutors geared up for Jamal's trial, they decided to seek the death penalty. Jamal's defense counsel asserted that if Charles hadn't faced the possibility of death, then neither should Jamal. But that did not stand. On April 6th, it was determined that Jamal Williams McCrae would face the death penalty. In early January of 2019, Jamal requested that his trial be moved to a different county due to rampant pretrial publicity. His lawyers also requested that Shadow's family be limited in their remarks if they were allowed to provide victim impact statements. On Wednesday, February 27, 2019, Jamal appeared in court. It was assumed that he would continue making his case for those requests I just mentioned. But in a shocking twist, Jamal admitted to everything. He confessed to orchestrating Shadow's murder and assisting in hiding her body. He pled guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit murder, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Shadow's family and friends were at this hearing. Many wore t-shirts bearing the words, "Shadow's Army." After the hearing, Shadow's mother, London, said, "We are just glad we are getting justice, finally." However, there were portions of Jamal's plea that upset Shadow's family, namely how Jamal's version of events differed from Charles's. Jamal claimed that he and Shadow were not on a scavenger hunt. Instead, they were planning the murder of Jamal's current girlfriend, who Jamal claimed Shadow wanted dead. According to Jamal, he and Shadow spent that Friday, September 2nd, working out the details, and that night, they were scoping out potential places where they could kill his girlfriend and hide her body. That's what they were doing when Charles, pretending to be the landowner, approached them. When this information was shared during Jamal's hearing, Shadow's family was outraged, and understandably so. It's important to emphasize that there is no evidence that Shadow was trying to kill Jamal's girlfriend. Also, Jamal claimed that he wasn't present during Shadow's murder. He said he had returned to his truck, leaving Charles and Shadow alone together. Then Charles approached him and said, "It's done." It's unclear which version of events is more true. Regardless, the result was the same. They killed Shadow. There was no doubt about it. On Thursday, February 28, 2019, 27-year-old Jamal Williams McCrae was sentenced to life in prison. This came after several witnesses, including an expert witness, who described the pain Shadow would have gone through after having her throat slashed. Due to a sealed deal between Jamal and the authorities, he will be eligible for parole in 10 years. He also gets credit for the 875 days he had already spent in jail before trial. But as the Leaf Chronicle pointed out, military parole after such a short time is extremely rare. Most think it's unlikely he will be released. Jamal will only be able to serve a maximum of 75 years, and if that's the case, he'll get out of prison when he's 102 years old. With conflicting stories by the co-conspirators, we may never know why Shadow agreed to accompany her ex-husband late that terrible night in September 2016. Maybe she didn't agree. Maybe Jamal forced her. It certainly wouldn't be the first time in their relationship that he had been violent with her. No, it's more likely he was worried that Shadow would struggle and draw attention to them, so he did use some ruse to lure her out to her death. I find Charles Robinson's version of events more likely. Why would he lie about that? Especially since he took full responsibility for actually killing Shadow McClaine. He easily could have pointed the finger at Jamal or said they did it together. But it doesn't really matter. Shadow was now threatening Jamal's career, not just missing out on going to Afghanistan, but he could have been charged with sexual assault, spent time in a federal prison after being dishonorably discharged. She was wrecking his whole life. She wouldn't just walk away quietly. And for that, she had to die, even if he was too cowardly to kill her himself. Southern Fried True Crime is hosted and produced by me, Erica Kelley. Today's episode was researched and written by Andrea Marshbank and Erica Kelley. As usual, any editorial comments and opinions are my own. Southern Fried's original music is by Rob Harrison of Gamma Radio, and the original graphic art is by Coley Horner. If you have any case suggestions, please go to my website, southernfriedtruecrime.com, and click on the Listener Suggestion tab, or email sftcresearch@gmail.com. This is the best way for me to get those little-known cases y'all always send me. Please remember that I do not accept suggestions on social media private messages, but please come join our Facebook group, Southern Fried True Crime Fans Discussion Group, where we swap recipes, worship Dolly Parton, and share memes. We do, of course, discuss true crime, not just Southern Fried, but all kinds. But it is still very much a Southern lifestyle group. Our group is a safe and fun corner of Facebook, and by God, we mean it when we say no shit asses allowed. It's not just a motto, it's how we run the group. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe and please tell a friend or rate and review. I'm also on all large platforms like iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, and Audible. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Y'all take care.